Today we have two short suttas. We're going to study a bit about perception. Okay, we're going to study number 5 first. Okay, go to number 5. Yes, that's right. Okay. Right. Saññā Nanatta Sutta. Okay. Now, okay, there's some interesting words here. Saññā, of course, means, in this case, it means perception. And then Nanatta. Now, this ta at the end makes it an abstract noun, like ness. Okay, like goodness. Here, nana means various, right? Many, like manyness. Here we translate as diversity. Okay, like in Thai, say nana. Nana means different kind. Okay, so nanatta. Saññā nanatta, different kinds of perception, diversity of perception. Sutta is discourse on the diversity of perception. S14.7, chapter 14, Sutta 7. So this is a short sutta showing how we interpret our sense experiences, how we experience things and create our own world, so to speak. Yeah? Okay, so this is a bit of, in a sense, it's a bit of Abhidhamma, simplified. Okay. Okay, now let's look at the sutta itself. The sutta is quite informative, it's quite simple, quite clear. And there are some simple diagrams to help you. Let's look at the sutta. So imagine here how in the Buddha's time, the Buddha teachers and the monks remember the teaching, and then they put together his words in such a way, it's like dictating an audio talk or video talk. And the words are arranged such a way, almost like a picture form. So you read the words and then you listen to the words. Okay. Either you can read them and then listen to them also. So, and you reflect. Let the Dhamma fall in or fill up your understanding and consciousness. After a while, you hear this Dhamma coming back to you. You will naturally fit in and you say, oh, okay, now I see this more clearly. You begin to see things fit together, this idea in your mind. That's how we learn things, by the way. Okay. So here, the sutta starts at Sawati. So there is no mention of Ewang Me Suttang because this is a series of suttas in the Samyutta Nikaya. All right. So this was taught at Sawati. Bhikshus, dependent on the diversity of elements, there arises the diversity of perception. All right. So here you have two words. No? Element is dhatu, perception, saññā. Right. Notice again, dependent on the diversity of elements, there arises diversity of perceptions. Because there are many elements, there are many perceptions. Dependent on the diversity of perceptions, there arises the diversity of thought. Right? From elements comes perceptions, from perception comes thoughts. Saṅkappa. Okay, saṅkappa, as you know, is also the word in the Eightfold Path, right? Samma saṅkappa, right? So we can also translate this as intention. Thoughts as intentions. Okay. Here we translate intention because the next term is chanda, desire. Here meaning will to desire to act. Right? Dependent on the diversity of thoughts or diversity of intentions, there arises the diversity of desire. I want to do this, I want to do that, that kind of desire. Dependent on the diversity of desires, there arises the diversity of passions or fevers, parilaha or parilahu. Okay? Here basically it means really want to do it. There's this drive, powerful drive. You want to buy something, you want to go somewhere, you want to meet someone. Dependent on the diversity of passions, there arises the diversity of searching. Okay, so this is, you can translate as quest. You want more and more of it, in other words. Of course, this is an example of what is called wrong kind of searching, or not noble searching, ignoble searching. Remember, there is the noble searching, Ariya Pariyesana Sutta, right? The noble search sutta, about life of the Buddha, how he awakened and became enlightened. Right, so here the Buddha explains to us the nature of our experiences with 6 terms: elements, perceptions, thoughts, desires, passions, searching, or quest, if you like, pariyesana. Okay. The keyword that unites all of these terms is diversity, that many of them. Well, in a sense, to simplify it, we can say there are, you can say 4 kinds, 4 elements: earth, water, fire, wind. Beyond that, you can say there are 6 kinds of perceptions through the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Right. So this is a beginning of Buddhist psychology already. Right. So this is the syllabus. Then the Buddha will expand on each line, analyze each of this. What does he mean by this? Look at number 3. And what bhikshus is the diversity of elements. Dhatu Nanatta. Dhatu Nanatta. The form element, right? You have first Rupa Dhatu. The sound element, Sada Dhatu. The smell element, Gandha Dhatu. The taste element, Rasa Dhatu. The touch element, Pottabha Dhatu. The mind object element, Dhamma Dhatu. Okay. So mind object here refers to whatever is in our mind, including thoughts, imagination, things like that. Dhamma Dhatu, right? So here, this word Dhatu means elements. In a general sense of the word. For example, when the word Rupa Dhatu can also refer to the form world. So this is where Pali words tend to be quite flexible, polysemic, with one word can have a few meanings. And that helps in the explaining of this, some this very difficult ideas on how the mind works. So in a sense, much or most of the sutta words are not technical. Technical means you have fixed meaning and that's it. They're not like in the Abhidhamma, they're like that, they're more fixed. But here, they're they're flexible and they depend on the context, they connect with other words. Now we have heard of the 4 elements, and then here you have the 6 elements. And then different kinds of 6 elements also. Sometimes it can be quite confusing. So remember, context. What are we talking about? Now, if you talk generally, all these 6 elements, what have they in common? They all have to do with the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, wind. Now, even then, we say 4 elements, these are very basic elements. Earth are the solidity. Now, here again, you have to be careful not to get caught with the scientific view. You say, okay, I've learned in science, solidity is this, that. Forget about all that. Because if you impose too much on the way science teaches solidity, it can prevent you from learning what the reflective idea of form or matter is about. So in other words, it's not that science is wrong, science is correct and interesting in its own way. What I'm saying here is understand the nature, this meditative meaning of form, first rupa. And then later you'll find it's connected with modern science. Okay, that one you can do later, but don't mix it up, then it's going to be very difficult for you to practice. There'll be no practice basically. So it's not worth it, yeah? So rupa means that which changes, form changes all the time. Okay, this is also mentioned in science, right? So earth element refers to this solidity. The chair you're sitting on, it's not the chair, but it's the pressure, the weight, hardness, roughness. All these words describe matter or this earth element. Okay. The idea is to see a kind of unity, all this kind of experiences that arise in you. That's the earth element. Now, once you say earth element, you don't get caught up with too many thoughts about it. Then you don't start worrying and things like that. Right? So now, how does the earth element pervade all this? Now, remember, all these things we're talking about, the first five, especially form, sound, smell, taste, touch, they arise in the body. In a sense, the mind object also arises in the body, but we set it aside, especially for the mind. Okay, so you got five elements here comprising the body, and then one, the mind. So you have body and mind here. So form, sound, smell, taste, and touch are the earth element because they are body-based. Right? Earth, and then our body is such that it is mostly liquid, mostly fluid, blood, other liquid, and so on, fluids, right? That is the water element. The water is not H2O, it's just a name meaning liquid, fluid. So this body, this matter, is part solid, part watery. That's one way to understand it. Don't think them as things. Think of them as states of matter, if you like. Earth, water, fire. You feel warm. The weather in Malaysia, Singapore is very warm, so you feel the fire element even in your body, right? And that's a sign of life also, this fire element inside us, right? So there's this warm fire element. They go together, earth, water, fire. And then the wind element. Your wind means motion, movement. Even within our body, all these tiny little atoms and molecules are moving. The blood is moving, right? Our muscles are moving, we are moving. So there's movement. Earth, water, fire, wind. So these are the four physical elements that make us up. This is a unified way of looking at our body. Then we look into how, in terms of experience, all right, we talk about the senses. And once you talk about the senses, then you have these five or six other kinds of elements connected with how we experience things. So through the eye faculty, we experience the form element. We see form. We see form. Through the ear, yeah, you also see ear element. The ear, I mean, it's like scientific talking to say ear element. You can say ear, simply ear also can. So that there is the sound element arising in the ear. If you are wondering what does this element mean, it's something like thing, the sound thing, the form thing that is purified. But that's too simplistic, right? But that's the idea. So this sound element is like a unit of sound, something like that, to help us understand what's going on in our experience, our body that experiences sound. And there are many kinds of sound, right? Diversity of sound. Sada, dhatu. Sada means sound, okay? And then through the nose, you have this, there are sensitive areas in the nose where these molecules come in contact, and you get smell. elements of smell, right? So it's called gandha, the 2 elements of smell. And that is another kind of experience. And then these molecules of taste touch various parts of your tongue and you get different tastes. Now, notice all these things we learn as we evolve as human beings, from babies to adults. We notice different kinds of tastes, and depending on our culture, we all have different kinds of tastes, right? And that's called rasa dhatu. Okay, or there should be a macron over the A here, no? Then okay, so these are the 4, and then the 5th one is the body itself. The body as a whole, the muscles, which especially the external part of our skin, there's the touch element. We feel the weather, warm, heat, and cold. We feel touch of things and people. So that's the touch element. And here, it's just touch, but how we react to it is takes place as a mind object element in the mind. Okay, so that's a different kind of experience. On the body itself, that this touch is heat, cold, all right? Even when say you hold someone's hand, you say, okay, warm, cold, feeling of, when you have a sense of feeling of comfort, okay, that is a mental thing already, all right? So there's something else. So that is to go into details, all right? So earth elements, you have these 5 elements, and then you have this mind object element. Now this has nothing to do with earth, water, fire, wind, right? This is called consciousness element. This element number 5, consciousness element. There's one more element before this consciousness element. Actually, consciousness element is number 6. Yeah, the 5th element is actually space, because all this physical, all this earth element occupies space. All right. So space is a bit difficult to reflect on. So it's not usually mentioned, but it's there. If you look at the Rahulovada Sutta, it's mentioned, the Maharahulovada Sutta, for example. So you have the 6th element is consciousness, the mind. All right. So this to go to the deeper. All right. So you notice that this is diversity of elements, the different kinds of elements. To simplify this, different kinds of things we experience through our 6 senses. Another way of looking at this are our 6 senses, the 6 sense faculties. These are the objects of the 6 sense faculties. Right? So these are called the diversity of elements. Why are we talking about diversity of elements? Here is to help us understand that there are many things that influence the way we think, and very often this creates problems for us. Next, 4, and how bhikshus is it that dependent on diversity of elements, there arises diversity of perceptions? Dependent on diversity of perception, there arises diversity of thoughts. And dependent on diversity of thoughts, there arises the diversity of desires. And dependent on the diversity of desires, there arises the diversity of passions. And dependent on the diversity of passion, there arises the diversity of searching or seeking things, wanting this, wanting that. So here, actually, the keyword here is how, right? So the answer is in the next section, right? So before that, let's just look a bit more at this, all these sentences here. Here, one simple answer to this diversity is because of the mind. The mind looks and chooses which one to pay attention to. All these senses if we have all the 5 senses or 6 senses, 5 physical senses plus the mind, they are sensitive to things all the time. They are like 6 television cameras. They're all the time recording, right? And the mind is like the man who watches all these monitors, a security officer, like. So you look at the different monitors. So that's mindfulness. So you decide, okay, which one to pay attention to. Even now, like now, your 6 senses are working all the time. Your eye is seeing things, your ear is hearing things, your nose is, well, you're breathing and you can, there's probably no smell that you notice, but technically your nose can smell anything now. And then your body will feel whether the temperature is comfortable or not, and so on, all right? And there are, of course, thoughts coming into your mind. That's another thing, right? So, of course, in your case, because you've been so regular studying suttas, you easily pay attention to my voice and listen to the Dhamma, and you connect the teachings together. So your mind is at work through your ear, especially. The ear functions the most at this point, all right? But when you're eating, the taste function more, the tongue, right? And so on. So you find at different times in your day, the different senses will experience more. But even then, even though one single faculty or one single sense organ is active, there is a diversity, many different experiences will arise inside you. All right. So now the Buddha goes on to say, because of perception, sense perception, how we perceive things in cycles. That's the how. Okay. 5. Dependent on the form element, there arises perception of form. Dependent on perception of form, there arises the thought regarding form, right? So there is the I, there is form. The I, object. Object is the form, right? And then, of course, there is consciousness. It's called a triangle of perception. Then you perceive form. When you perceive form, you start thinking about it. You want to do this, you want to do that. That's intention, okay? That's the thought regarding form. Form-based intention. Depending on the thought regarding form, depending on the intention based on form, there arises desire for form, right? For example, when I look at the posting in Telegram and Facebook, I say, okay, what is this? I read it. I say, oh, this is very nice. Oh, there's this nice, wonderful book on Dhamma. I want this book. Okay, so that also is a kind of desire. Not too bad, but it's still a desire in this case. So here, chanda is a broad sense, including neutral sense of desire. Or you can have a negative sense. You want this, you want that, which is not helpful, right? So dependent on the desire for form, there is the passion for form. For example, I say, okay, I must look for this. So I go to the internet, I look very carefully here and there how to get this this book that I want, right? Or we go shopping looking for something that we want, right? So that's the passion driving us. Dependent on the passion for form, there arises a search, right? So this, of course, as I said, we go on looking for these things. And sometimes this looking goes on for a long time, and it does cost us some things in the sense that we forget other things, right? So here the Buddha has brought down to very simple ground level, explaining to us how we perceive things, how our mind works. So when we know how it works, then we are more in control. That's the meaning here. Okay. All right. Now let's go further down now. 6. Dependent on the sound element. Okay. So now the Buddha goes on to each of the elements. Just now was form. Here, that means you look something to the eye, and then you have all this perception process arising in you. This same process can arise to sound. You listen to someone says something, and then you perceive it. That means you like it, you don't like it, and so on. And then there is the thought, the intention behind it. This is what I should do, and so on. And then you're driven to do it, and then you act on it. It goes on like that through sound. It can be good, it can be bad. So it's important for us to know: is it good? Then we do it. Is it bad? Then we try to let it go. All right. Then number 7, dependent on the smell element, there arises the perception of smell. Dependent on the perception of smell, there arises the thought regarding smell. Now I'm going to summarize it so that we have easier for us, since we have repeated it twice already. So your perception, we perceive something, then we think about it, then that we desire it, then we are driven by it, the passion, then we search, we want it, to get it, right? So that's what happens. So this is how our experience cycle works. We smell something, we say, oh, this is very nice, I want this. What dish is this? How do I cook this? Or where do I buy this, for example, yeah? And the next one, 8, dependent on the taste element, there arises the perception of taste. Here, very similar to smell, isn't it? If you talk about food, right? So you taste something, you say, oh, I like this, right? Or I don't like this. And if you like this, then you start having intentions. I must have this, all right? And then there's the desire to get it, right? And then you're driven to get this thing, right? And then you look for it, you get it. Now, one of the ways I deal with this is when I like something, I will go shopping and I look at the prices, okay? And nowadays things are so expensive. I say, oh, I rather not have this. It's not really necessary. So that way, I don't have to think too much about it. So there are different ways we learn to cut down that drive, that passion for searching, for wanting all these things. So these are different skillful means we use to control ourselves, discipline ourselves, our experiences through the different senses, in this case, to taste. Now, number 9 is touch element. Okay, just push up a bit, please. Yeah. Go up a bit here. Dependent on the touch element, there arises perception of touch. Here, of course, touch can mean temperature, the comfort we feel holding someone's hands and so on, right? So you have the perception of touch, and then the thought comes to you, and there is the desire. Desire includes wanting or not wanting, can be either way, you know, or it can be neutral also. And then you act on it and so on, right? So that is touch, no? Right? Then 10, dependent on the mind object element, or simple word is thought. Depending on your thought, there arises perception of mind object. So you think about this. So here vitaka vichara, right? So the mind object here is the vitaka, and then you look further into it, that's vichara. You ponder, think about it. Dependent on the perception of mind object, there arises the thought regarding mind object. So here you go on thinking about it, then the desire arises, right? And then the passion, you think about, say, I must have this, and then you go out to get it. This is through your thoughts, right? So this can be anything. For example, you can say, oh, it's a nice place, I want to go there. Or I need to exercise for my health, right? So you're driven there. Of course, in this case, it's good, you know, you want this, you do in such a way that it benefits you, in other words. Now, the closing refrain. All right, so this is the ending of the sutta already, actually. In this way, bhikshus, dependent on the diversity of elements, there is a diversity of perception. Dependent on diversity of perception, there arises diversity of thoughts. Dependent on diversity of thoughts, there arises the diversity of desires. Dependent on diversity of desires, there arises the diversity of passions. Dependent on diversity of passion, there arises the diversity of searching, right? So there are many ways that we act from this these 6 stages of perception, if you like. First, there is the element, that is through seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, and then thinking, right? Then you perceive it, you like it, you don't like it, you don't care about it, and then the thoughts behind it, and then you want it or you don't want it, that's desires, and then you are driven, whether you like it or you don't like it, also it drives you. If you don't like it, it drives you to push away, right? And then you go on doing it, you go on doing it. So this is a very basic idea of how the mind works, how perception works. The next sutta is called Tika Rathakara Sutta. Tika means the triads, 3 things, Tika. Ratha means chariot in this case. The modern word Ratha in Thai becomes rot, okay? It means car, right? Okay, then Kara means maker, Rathakara, chariot maker. Sutta, discourse. The 3 discourse on the chariot maker. The old name was Pachetana, because the name of the charioteer was Pachetana, but it's a bit difficult to remember, because Tika is easier. And Tika also refers to this number 3 here, notice, A3.15. So we know this sutta comes from this collection in the Anguttara. Okay, this sutta is about the nature of abhisaṅkhāra. Abhisaṅkhāra is a word for karma. Notice saṅkhāra, right? Abhi means like connected with saṅkhāra. This is a very short and sweet sutta about the chariot maker. All right, let's go down and look at the translation. Right, here we are. Tika Rathakara Sutta, the 3 discourse on the chariot maker, A 3.15. This is actually a Jataka story told by the Buddha, right? So it's very interesting. You find there are Jatakas even in the sutta itself. Let's see, how does this Jataka story fit in? At one time, the Blessed One stayed in the deer park near Benares. There, the Blessed One addressed the monks thus: Bhikshus, Bhante, the monks answered the Blessed One in essence. The Blessed One said this: once upon a time, Bhikshus, there was a Raja, a king named Pachetana. I got to correct myself. Pachetana was the chariot maker, actually it's the king. Now, Bhikshus, the Raja Pachetana addressed the chariot maker thus: Master chariot maker, 6 months from now, I will go into battle. Can you make a new pair of wheels for me, Master chariot maker? The chariot maker monks then answered the Raja in essence thus: I can, Your Majesty. All right. Now, we know a few interesting things here. In this case, the king asked the chariot maker to make only 2 wheels. That means his chariot only has 2 wheels. And the front part is put on the horse. Yeah. So with 2 wheels, the chariot can move more easily on the battlefield. Right? So the king says, make me 2 wheels to go into battle. Then monks, when 6 months less 6 days had passed, right? So even before 6 months, the chariot maker finished but 1 wheel. Then Bhikshus, the Raja Pachetana, addressed the chariot maker thus: Master chariot maker, 6 days from now I will go into battle. Have you completed the new pair of wheels for me. Your Majesty, said the chariot maker, during the 6 months last 6 days, only one wheel is completed. All right. But, Master Charioteer, will you be able to complete the second wheel in 6 days' time? The chariot maker monks then answered the Raja in essence thus, I can, Your Majesty. All right, so this chariot maker has completed one wheel in 6 months, and then the next wheel, he says, I can do in 6 days. Right? Here you are, Your Majesty. Here are your new pair of wheels completed. Okay, so long story short, the 2 wheels are ready. 2.2. But Master Chariot Maker, I see no difference at all between this wheel completed 6 months ago and the wheel completed in 6 days. Oh, there is a difference, Your Majesty. Let Your Majesty look. All right, so now this is a very interesting Jataka story. The chariot maker makes 2 wheels. One took 6 months. That means he took time and very carefully made. The other one only 6 days. Very fast, right? Obviously, there's some quality issue here. All right. But Master Chariot Maker, sorry, here, 2.3. Then Bhikshus, the chariot maker, set rolling the wheel completed in 6 days. It kept rolling as long as its momentum lasted. Then circled around and fell to the ground, right? So imagine this wheel is gently pushed by the chariot maker. The wheel moves and then it wobbles and then it falls flat on the ground. That's the 6-day wheel. Now, then he set rolling the wheel completed in 6 months, last 6 days. This is the wheel which took longer time. Yeah. It kept rolling as long as its momentum lasted and then stood still, as if you might say, firmly fixed to the axle, as if it is already fixed to the chariot. It's just, it moves and then it stands, doesn't fall. Why? You can say it's well balanced, everything is properly done, right? Then the king asks, but Master Chariot Maker, what is the cause? What is the condition that this wheel completed in 6 days kept rolling as long as the momentum lasted, then rolled around and fell to the ground? Why is that the case, right? Okay. Go down. Let's go down some more. And Master Charioteer, what is the cause? What is the condition that this wheel completed in 6 months, last 6 days, kept rolling as long as the momentum lasted, and then stood still, as it were, we might say, firmly fixed to the axle? All right, now the significance of this story that the Buddha is telling us. Your Majesty, as regards the wheel completed in 6 days, its rim is the outer part, outer circle, is crooked, full of faults, full of flaws. Not noticeable, but the chariot maker knows. The spokes too are crooked, full of faults, full of flaws, not perfect. The hub, the center, too, is crooked, full of faults, full of flaws. On account of the crooked, faulty, and flawed rim, the crooked, faulty, and flawed spokes, and the crooked, faulty, and flawed hub, it kept rolling as long as the momentum lasted, and then circled around and fell to the ground. So it's not balanced. The wheel is not that good. Your Majesty, as regards the wheel that completed in 6 months, last 6 days, its rim is not crooked, faultless, flawless. The spokes too are not crooked, faultless, flawless. The hub too is not crooked, faultless, flawless. In other words, the whole wheel is good, well made. And as a result, on account of the uncrooked, faultless, flawless rim, the uncrooked, faultless, and flawless spokes, the uncrooked, faultless, and flawless hub, it kept rolling as long as the momentum lasted, and then stood still, as if you might say, firmly fixed to the axle. All right, so this is the story of the chariot maker. Then the Buddha says, section 4, you might think, bhikshus, that the chariot maker at that time were someone else, but do not see it as, bhikshus. At that time, I was that chariot maker. So there you are. So we know this is a Jataka. No? The Buddha was the chariot maker in the past. Then, bhikshus, I was skilled in regards to wood that was crooked, to wood faulty or flawed. So he knows his task, he knows his job. Now the teaching for us. Now, bhikshus, I, as an arahat, fully self-awakened one, am skilled in regards to the crookedness of the body, bodily fault and flaw. In regards to crookedness of speech, verbal fault and flaw. In regards to crookedness of mind, mental fault and flaw. Right? So here crookedness means not keeping the precepts physically, doing something bad, something violent, and so on, with body, speech, and mind. 5. Bhikshus, in whichever monk or nun, crookedness of body, bodily fault and flaw have not been abandoned, crookedness of speech, verbal fault and flaw have not been abandoned, crookedness of mind, mental fault and flaw have not been abandoned, so is their falling, just like that of the wheel completed in 6 days. So in other words, if you don't keep the precepts properly, don't train the mind, you'll be like that wheel that is quickly made. It's not very balanced. It won't work well. Bhikshus, in whichever monk or nun, of course this includes lay people also, crookedness of body, bodily fault and flaw have been abandoned, crookedness of speech, verbal fault and flaw have been abandoned, crookedness of mind, mental fault and flaw have been abandoned, so is their standing, just like that of the wheel completed in 6 months, last 6 days. So notice here, it's amazing how the Buddha uses the comparison. Standing, right? In good standing. Here, the people who keep the precepts will remain happy, remain standing in goodness. Whereas those who don't keep the precepts, they will fall. All right? So then the closing, 5.3, further down. Therefore, bhikshus, right? So here the Buddha is telling us, therefore, you is us, né? You should train yourselves thus. We will abandon crookedness of body, bodily faults and flaw, especially the precepts against killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, right? So that's of the body. We will abandon crookedness of speech, verbal fault and flaw. Here's the 4th precept. We will abandon crookedness of the mind, mental fault and flaw. It's got to do with the 5th precept. Thus, bhikshus, you should train yourselves. And this is the teaching the Buddha gave us, reminding us to keep the practice. Okay, so this is a very sweet and short sutta, reminding us to be like the well-made chariot wheel. Balanced, then we are calm, we are happy. Right, sadhu. Okay? So we have 15 minutes, well, a little under 15 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Piya, for the teaching. Now, Sister Isim, please take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Ratna. Sadhu, thank you, Brother Piya, for the teaching. On the chat box, at the moment, there's no question posted yet. Any brother and sister would like to ask verbally? You can do so now.
Yeah, just put up your hand.
There's one question just pop up from Brother Maya Opal.
Okay.
Can we do away with intentions entirely?
Well, of course you can. That's what the Arhat does. Then again, what do we mean by doing away with intention? We should not do away with good intention, right? Intention is it's a thought that tells you, okay, I'm going to walk, I'm going to sit, right? That kind of intention, you can't do away with it. It's so natural, you see. What we should do away with intention is greed, hatred, delusion. That is what we need to do away with it, right? So, of course, if you just decide to sit without any thought, that is not regarded as intention. There's no problem there, see. It's when there is greed, hate, delusion. That one, yes, will cause problems. And the Arhat does not have that. No greed, hate, delusion. The Arhat is very clear what he wants to do or not want to do. But basically, just to answer the question, yes, when you talk about awakening, we have to get rid of intention, meaning greed, hate, delusion, but not the action itself. You can't get rid of the action unless you already go into nirvana, pass away into nirvana. Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, greed and hate is like still easy to understand, but I find it difficult to understand delusion.
Delusion.
Yes.
What is it that you have difficulty with? Yeah, delusion.
Like greed, I can still sense or feel that, okay, maybe this is lust or this is greed. Same for anger or hate. But what is delusion?
Delusion is when you're not sure. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it good? Is it bad? Right? You might even wonder, is it worth it? You know, you're not sure. So delusion is not only lack of knowledge, but like today, you know, today, wow, you got this delusion machine in front of you. You got to be very careful with this computer. Lots of wrong information. And they're very good at it nowadays with AI and all that, right? So there's even more delusion nowadays. So you really have to be very mindful. You don't get caught up with it. It will cost you a lot of things in many ways. So delusion is a very risky, very dangerous defilement today. With the computers right in our homes, so from outside, these delusions can come in. So delusion is not knowing what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, or worse, we remember the wrong things. So that's why we got to set things right. There is something called ditti jukamma. It means to straighten your view, correct your view, let go of wrong views. Don't get caught up with wrong views. Don't listen to people who teach you the wrong things. That's how you get your delusion. Okay? Wrong. Yeah? Go on.
Okay, so like I have my question is that so now I understand what you're saying, and yes, this is very much inexperience. This delusion it comes.
Yes.
But then that's the point, because at that point you don't see what is right and what is wrong. Then how do you get rid of it?
By making a mistake. Like it or not. Mistakes, we don't choose to make mistakes. That's why I say by making mistakes, you don't really choose to make a mistake. If you do choose to make a mistake, it is something else. It's a strategy, see? Normally we don't choose, we don't know we have made a mistake until we realize it. We accept it, we say, oh dear, this is wrong. And then it becomes a mistake. And then, for example, you know, like when we talk about Vinaya, no? Like somebody finds something, you know, he takes something without knowing it is not his. And then he takes it. After that point, it's still not stealing, you see. Then he looks at it, he says, oh, this is not mine. And he said, oh, this is valuable, you know. Oh, why should I give it back? Let me keep it. From that moment onwards, he has broken the precept. You see? So when you know, the intention is there, when you know, all right, that this is not good, then you let it go. So I'm not going to let this thing fool me, because it's going to be very costly. It's going to cost me a lot of pain. It's going to cost people who are important to me a lot of pain also. So that's wisdom. Okay.
So mistake also we realize in time, like once something, like sometimes it can take a lot of time, I guess, before we can make up our mind over something, whether something was a mistake or not.
Yeah, sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes we can learn very fast. like the meditation teachers tell us, everything is teaching us. So whatever we do, we look around, we learn how to correct ourselves. That's what the Dhamma is about. Yeah, that's why we have so many Sutta classes, you know, that keep reminding us how to correct ourselves. All right. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you, Brother Piya.
Okay.
The second question from Brother Maya Opang.
Mm.
When the Bodhisattva was living in the palace, could we say that he broke the precepts as in regards sense pleasures?
I wouldn't say that, because it was the custom of those days, and he was royalty. But more important than that, because he was the Bodhisattva, he has very good sense, very deep respect for people. So my understanding, it is unlikely he would have taken advantage of those people. He would. We know from all the stories that he was not a violent person. You know, he even took care of that wounded bird. You know, the hangsa. You know, and so on. So I wouldn't say he broke the precept. No. Yeah, he enjoyed sense of pleasure maybe, but I don't think he broke the precepts. Because remember, the Buddha does say certain disciples, the last category, you know, the long list of disciples, they also enjoy sensual pleasures. They're married, they have family, they're very happy, but they know their limits. They understand the precepts, in other words. Okay. The respect for people, knowing when to stop, limits, and a good sense, compassion. Right? Those are important aspects of the precept keeping too. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Piya.
All right. Yes.
The next question from Brother LCO.
Okay.
He's asking, is the earlier teaching like from the basis of the 5 aggregates?
Yeah, you can, you know, these are different models, you see. So this is the perception model, but we can see underneath all these teachings, all these words, there are the 5 aggregates. They're interconnected. They are ways of teaching the Dhamma. Depends on what you want to talk about. So you use the different models. Okay. So if you want to talk about the structure of experience, you will use the 5 aggregates. If you want to talk about the dynamics, you know, what actually happens, then you use a perception model and so on, right? And then you have to go into greater detail, then you use the dependent arising. So they're all different models used. And one will lead to the other. So after a while, you find, wow, they're actually all speaking the same thing. And it becomes clearer, things become simpler that way. Okay, let's have a family photo first.
I would like to give a comment on this chariot maker's parable. I'm thinking of
Yes.
the chariot makers takes 6 months, less 6 days to make a good wheel.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, my understanding is that it is difficult for us to do good deeds than doing bad deeds. So that's why it took such a long time to perfect
Exactly.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, there are different ways you can interpret it. So we take time to study Dhamma. We take time to learn things, right? Sometimes we think the quick way is the easy way, but that's not the case. So there are many things you can discuss in the suttas. Yes. Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
1 more minute. We got one person just now who came on and after that disappeared at the start. Got connection problems. Anyway, so if you get disconnected, remember we have recorded all these things. They're available in YouTube, right, Rana?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Brother Piya, there's another question from Brother LC here.
Yeah, sure.
The second teaching on the chariot maker as reflecting on the strictness of the Arhat perfection is involve very determined action, which as layman is difficult, is it?
No, not. I mean, it speaks quite generally. Basically, it's saying that, you know, to take time to learn, right? Prepare well for your action, because if you don't, then you know the actions will not be good, will not be perfect, even, so to speak. There'll be flaws. So basically, before you act, think carefully. While you're acting, watch mindfully. After the action, reflect. When you have the chance, reflect and say, okay, where did I go wrong? How can I better myself? So basically, the Buddha is reminding us to be mindful in our actions, so that the action is wholesome and it brings happiness to us. So I think this speaks on a very simple level for even lay people, not just the monks. Of course, the Buddha will address the monks more often because the monks are there and they especially sign up, became monks for the training. Okay. All right. No more questions, huh? Okay.
No more questions, Brother Piya. Thank you.
Right. Okay, that's another good day of Sutta study, a day to rejoice. We have got together and done this really wonderful meeting and study. So remember this event, and say, by the goodness, by the power of all these good things I've done, may I be well and happy. Send your kind thoughts to your loved ones, to people important to you, to others, especially people in old age like myself also. We need your good wishes and your metta, so that we become stronger, because we know you're happy. And most of all, keep in mind the three jewels, because it is because of the Buddha that we have all this wonderful Dhamma. And the Dhamma is there when we practice it. And the Sangha, the noble Sangha, represents the goal that we should head for to attain the path in this life itself. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.